Hey, everybody, and welcome to From Justin to Game, a special episode of our podcast where we stop talking about movies for a week and talk about video games.
Yeah, we just wanted to change it up, for you and for us.
Yes.
And normally, a film, is about an hour and a half to 2 hours long, and a video game can be anywhere from 10 to 50 hours. And, it's been a hell of a week.
We still are going to do things the same way we normally do things, where we watch one bad movie and one good movie and we talk about how they're the same. But this time it's we played one good game and one bad game and talk about how they're the same. So What are the games this week, Bob?
All right. The two games that we are comparing this week are 2013's The Last of Us and 1998, I want to say, Superman 64.
Yes.
Which is not its actual title, but everyone lovingly calls it Superman 64.
What, and who directed these games?
Well, I can tell you who directed The Last of Us.
Oh, really? I was trying to punk you.
Oh, jeez.
It was a punk.
Jeez. Okay, well, it worked because I started sweating immediately. So good for you, Mike.
Well, who's the director? Do you remember?
Let me look. So the creative director was Neil Druckmann for The Last of Us, and then it was directed by Bruce Straley. So I think in video games, they normally have the team is a lot bigger in terms of creative heads, So there was a creative director and then a director, and they both kind of cover different aspects of the creation of the game.
I'm not sure exactly who directed Superman 64, but it was produced and kind of spearheaded by Eric Kane of the French company Titus. Video games and movies are interesting because they're team efforts, both of them, I guess. But video games are specifically team efforts where there's not as much, authorship in the way that movies. There's no auteur theory for video games, or at least not as much as there is for movies.
Are there any games that could be considered auteur visions?
Yes.
Name names.
The games by Hideo Kojima.
Oh,
everybody
right.
knows his name, and then also the games that he makes. I'm currently playing through Death Stranding right now, and it's very much like an auteur vision.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Metal Gear Solid when that came out. Everybody was kind of blown away by how specific the vision for that game was. So we are talking about video games this week. Bob, you are playing a bunch of video games now. You've kind of entered the world of gamers, have you not?
I have. It's been a recent moment. I think I'm still watching a lot of TV and movies. But yeah, I inherited an Xbox 360, and by virtue of that, also just a bunch of games. And I'm just working my way through the historical Rolodex of great games made by people, and it's been a roller coaster. And it's fun. I ultimately don't love video games. I get tired of them very quickly.
Okay.
20 minutes into most games, I'm like, this isn't as much fun as other things I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's fun. It's fun. And I'm very bad at them. I always have been. Friends growing up hated playing with me because I was always dying. But, I'm enjoying myself, Mike. Thanks for asking.
What are you rocking these days? What discs?
So I'm currently working my way through Call of Duty Black Ops.
Nice.
And I just started Red Dead Redemption.
The first one.
Yeah. So I beat Skate 3, which came out in 2009. Yeah, feel pretty good about it. Well, I beat it as much as you can. It's just a free range. You can do whatever the fuck you want kind of game, but there are a lot of goals you have to achieve in career mode. And then, I don't know, I just started. Oh, I'm also playing Halo 3 and Halo Reach.
Wow.
Oh, and Left 4 Dead. I've been playing a lot of games, actually.
And do you go back and forth between them, or do you just kind of I just play
one? I do.
Okay.
I have major commitment issues. Yeah. I'm flip-flopping all the time. I get bored of one after 15 minutes, pop in another game.
I think that's fine.
If I may, Wii Sports. I'm much better at golf than I've ever been. I'm worse at bowling than I used to be. And I can't figure out tennis for the life of me.
Yeah. So you're playing Wii Sports with your brother-in-law and your sister?
Sure am. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Video games are fun. They're a nice way to keep in touch with people and gives you more shit to talk about. It's great.
Yeah. Do you find you have gotten into the weird productivity gameplay loop?
What do you mean by that?
The gameplay loop of being like feeling like you have tasks to accomplish, goals, just things that, words you would use to describe your regular life.
But in a game.
Yeah, in a game you have like things to do, and you become like once you get into the game, you're like, I have to do this thing.
Yes.
And so you kind of give it more attention than you would something in your regular life. Like I have to buy a brush for my horse in Red Dead Redemption. And you're playing this game, ignoring your actual responsibilities in life.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. Before, I was ignoring my regular responsibilities in my life. But now, and I just wasn't playing video games and just bad at, being a responsible human being. But now I'm distracted by video games. And now I have an excuse, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, I know what you mean. That sensation of like when you're playing on a campaign or something and it's like, did I really achieve enough to really turn this off? It's only been 7 hours.
Yeah.
That feeling has happened for sure.
Okay. What's your longest game sesh so far?
Actually, it hasn't been that bad. Probably 4 hours. That's my max.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Yeah, I do have, I do care about my own decency as a human being. So I try to keep the eye on the clock because it's easy to just get like absorbed.
Yeah.
And then,
totally.
Then what? You're just like, you're captivated, you're busy. And all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to wake up at 5. You know, it's a good time. It's a good time.
So would you say you're an Xbox kid?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I'm a Nintendo kid.
Nintendo kid. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was a GameCube kid, but.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But I did play a lot of Xbox growing up, the original Xbox and the 360.
Well, I'm a Nintendo kid, but I recently acquired a PS4.
Yes.
And I've just been kind of playing all these games that I never played before. Because Nintendo, a lot of these games don't come out on Nintendo.
Yeah, Nintendo's a very limited system in a way.
Well, if you look back at their history, they make bizarre business choices, which ultimately inhibit third-party development.
Yeah.
It basically means, like the Super Nintendo came out, Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy III, I guess is what it was called, was like a huge hit. So logically, it'd be like, oh, let's really make Square Enix happy and give them the opportunity to make Final Fantasy VII on our new system. But then they were like, no, let's make cartridges instead of CDs. And then, Square's like, we don't want to make this new game that requires a lot of full motion video. We don't want this game to come out on your friggin' cartridge system.
Wait, but everything was cartridges and then it went to disc for the GameCube.
It went to disc for the PlayStation. That was the first one.
Oh, right. But
or the first popular one.
So Superman 64, as you and I both know, there's a Game Boy version and then the 64 version. And there was supposed to be a version for the PlayStation.
That's right.
But it never came to be.
That's correct.
Do you have any other info on Superman 64?
Oh, nice segue.
You see what I did there?
I'm
a paid professional.
Superman 64, which is not his title. It's actually called Superman: The New Superman Adventures. Based off of the cartoon. Came out in 1999. Was developed by Titus Interactive, a French developer. And it was in production for 2 years. Titus, the company, wanted to make a big game after they'd made a couple of other games. They made games such as Virtual Chess and Incredible Crisis, as well as a game called Titus, the Fox, which is what their logo is, a fox. They got the rights to the Superman franchise because I guess for some reason nobody was wanting to make a game out of this cartoon that came out back then.
I feel like it wasn't well respected during that time either. And like Batman was crushing. I feel like Spider-Man was doing well as a franchise, but Superman had really fallen because the movies were in the 90s, but the films the movies for Batman were in the 90s, but the movies for Superman stopped in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I feel like the franchise just became boring for people.
Yeah, they weren't really making Superman stuff back then.
Mm-hmm.
And even like superhero movies, like it seems like we got superhero movies all figured out now.
Yes. Yeah.
But back then it was all over the place. It felt like.
It took a few decades for sure. Yeah.
However, it sounds like, based on what I've read on the internet, they had trouble with the companies that own the Superman license, that being DC Comics and Warner Brothers. Both of those companies were very restrictive with the development of the game and were always giving Titus notes. Supposedly, the licensing team at Warner Brothers was swapped out at the last minute, and they didn't have the same relationship with Titus as the original team. So they just kind of were jerks about it, it sounds like.
Oh.
According to the producers of the game. And because originally Titus wanted to make an open world Superman game where you flew around, got on the ground, did missions, kind of like Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Like an open world action-y game, but whatever that meant back in like the late 90s before Grand Theft Auto kind of changed the game, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The game is kind of like known for its ring stages where Superman flies around and kind of, instead of just flying around and having fun flying, the game forces you to fly through rings for some reason. People make fun of the game for that.
How come nobody makes fun of Sonic the Hedgehog then? Like, what's the difference?
Well, he doesn't fly through the rings.
He runs through rings.
But he uses them as currency.
So?
And also, like, Sonic the Hedgehog's a whole other thing.
No, they're very similar. They're both blue, okay, and they both go through golden rings. What's the difference?
They're literally the same. You're right, actually.
Yeah, Why didn't we compare and contrast those two games?
I mean, should we?
No, it's too late.
Anyway, the ring stages in the game were supposed to just be a tutorial. As they went through the development time and the game was getting less and less complete because they were just going through bureaucratic nightmare, they basically just were like, okay, this is the game, I guess. So they just made the ring stages, which were just supposed to be a tutorial. They just made that a central part of the game. The game was shown at 3 consecutive E3s, the Entertainment Expo held in Los Angeles. And every year people got more excited about it. And then when the game was released, a lot of people said it was probably one of the worst games ever. And it still is kind of considered one of the worst games, if not the worst game ever, which is, I guess, why it is a good candidate for this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's funny just reading about the fights that the company had with Warner Brothers, because they would be like, well, Superman can't swim. And then the company would have to be like, well, they had to go through Superman lore and Superman comics just to prove to the people who held the rights to Superman that Superman could do these very normal things that Superman does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Superman never punches people, and is like, yeah, he mostly punches people.
He literally, that's what his business card says. It's just people puncher. That part of the game where he has that fight with that long fish is quintessential N64. Because there's a big fish in Mario 64. I love how water is rendered on the 64. It's very funny. And the fishes are great.
Did you ever play Wave Race?
No. What's that?
That is a Nintendo 64 and GameCube game, actually.
Oh, well, I have a GameCube.
Get a hold of Wave Race, whatever the one on GameCube is called.
Oh, okay.
But, that game is like, if you love water physics in games, that is the game.
I live for water physics.
Because that game it's a Sea-Doo. It's a Sea-Doo game where you basically ride on a jet ski.
Is it a racing game?
Yeah, it's Wave Race.
Are there giant fish you have to fight?
No, but you see them in the distance.
Oh.
You might even do like whatever the Sea-Doo version of an Ollie is. You might do that over them. I don't know. I can't remember. I have played both of these games, and I do remember when it came out on N64. It blew my mind.
I bet.
But you did some research on The Last of Us.
I sure did. Should I talk about it?
Yeah, give me some facts about this game.
All right. So the game started development in 2009, was released in 2013, started being advertised in 2011. Let me go through the old notes here. So I guess maybe I'll just do like a brief synopsis.
Hell yeah.
That makes sense. This film, oh my God, wow. I called it a film because it's such a cinematic game. This game, this citizen game of games, is renowned for its plot. And so the basic premise is it's a post-apocalyptic story, but it starts out in like air quotes, the present tense, and you meet Joel, you meet his daughter, you meet his brother Tommy, and then you also see the outbreak of what will cause cause the pandemic, which are these like little like fungi spores that get in the air, and then they enter the human body, and then they take over humans and cause them to become mindless, ruthless killers, basically. And so Joel is able to escape. His daughter dies, and then basically it stops there, and then the game starts in present tense, which is like I don't know, like it's 10 or 20 years later. He's like grizzled, has a beard, his hair's starting to gray. He wears more plaid. You know, the important things that indicate that somebody's older. And now the world is sort of normalized in this post-apocalyptic fashion.
Yeah.
And there's like safe areas with communities built, and then there's like the unknown areas where these like zombie people are running around and wreaking havoc and being real pests to society. And so you meet Joel later, and then you meet Ellie, who is a young girl who has been attacked by one of these zombies and is infected, but she should have been turned into a zombie by this point because 3 weeks have transpired. And now she's immune, basically. That's what everyone assumes. And then the whole plot from that point forward is to see Joel and Ellie's relationship blossom as he tries to get her to a militia group named Fireflies sort of headquarters where they want to get a sample from her and create a vaccine for this virus.
Correct.
And then the game is very long, and you go on many adventures, and you see their relationship blossom, and they become like a family of their own. Anyway, so yeah, the game came out in 2013, made a bunch of money, sold a lot of games. It's renowned. Critically, it was received very positively. It's called the Citizen Game of Games. It's very impressive. It was renowned for its character-driven plot and the performance. And like this game, like used performance capture and many like modern techniques to make a really compelling video game.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been interesting if they had used whatever motion capture existed in 1998 to help along Superman 64.
I mean, I don't think it would be that different.
No, surely it's a thing in 1998. I don't know.
Yeah, motion capture was a thing in 1998.
It must be.
They started working on Lord of the Rings back then.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Look at you go.
Yeah, so they had the technology.
Wow.
Titus Interactive couldn't get a hold of it for Superman 64, so they just made him look like he's constantly struggling with his body at all times.
Anywho, so The Last of Us. So Troy Baker plays Joel, and Ashley Johnson plays Ellie. And so they did motion capture and all of the voice work. And from what it sounds like, the two of them, plus the writer and creative director, it sounds like the dynamic was collaborative from what I've read in terms of dictating where the story went. Because
interesting.
The impetus for the game was there's a type of spore which is real in this world with a name I have written down. Cordyceps fungi were the inspiration for the game. And basically what this fungi does is it enters the nervous system of insects and it forces them to basically help get other fungi. Like it helps them like, I don't know, like get it and help it live a better life. I don't know. But anyways, it turns these insects into slaves, basically. Mm-hmm. And so Neil Druckmann, learned about this, thought it was fascinating, and thought it'd be interesting if this virus could like evolve to do the same thing to humans. And then that was the impetus for the story. And then he came up with Joel and Ellie, and then they cast it. And then between the three of them, it sounds like they kind of figured out the rest of the plot from there. Which seems like an unconventional way to make a video game. I don't know. But that's kind of interesting. And you can kind of feel that with The The Last of Us. Like the plot doesn't necessarily, it's not clean storytelling.
No, not really, no.
So, you can kind of tell that maybe they were like, oh, the characters love each other here and blah, blah, blah. We'll make them do this. And it's like, this isn't really a good plot, but I'm in it to win it.
Yeah, they were like, let's make it so that Joel doesn't emote or have anything interesting about him until the very end.
Yeah. Anywho, so the game was made by Naughty Dog, which I've just learned also made Crash Bandicoot in the 90s.
Yeah.
Early 2000s. Very cool. This game was a huge hit, made a bunch of money.
They just came out with a sequel this last year, which was also...
it took them 7 years to have it come out.
Yeah. It was voted Game of the Year by a lot of places.
The 2021?
Mm-hmm.
The 2013 version won Game of the Year at the Game Developers Choice Awards.
Right.
So it was literally Game of the Year. So that's cool that they were able to do it twice because I haven't played the second one yet. Anyways, that's basically it. It's like an amazing game. It was the first real I feel like in 2020 terms, it's not that impressive.
No, not really.
For 2013, sure, absolutely an outstanding game. And definitely paved the way for how storytelling and video games are going to develop in the 20-teens.
I just finished it like a week or two ago. I did have a couple of moments where I was like, I can see why this would have blown someone's mind 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, yeah, what year did the PlayStation 3 come out?
Oh, no, the PlayStation 3 came out in 2006, but this game came out right at the end of its lifespan.
Yeah, here's the thing. Same with Superman 64. It came out sort of in the back nine of the the duration of that system before a new one came out. And the same is true of The Last of Us and PlayStation 3.
Right. Wow, fascinating.
Yeah, so that's my first comparison. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I felt pretty proud about it.
No, wow,
I just wrote down in my notes, they both came out in the back nine.
That is a good segue.
Thanks.
You're killing it with segues this week.
Buddy, I live for segues. I drive one to work, and I like using them when I talk, okay?
I see you driving them down White Avenue all the time.
Just popping ollies on my Segway.
Popping ollies, doing some sick grinds.
Yeah, trying to do 5-0 grinds.
I saw you doing Indy Nosebone once.
Yeah, it's annoying, though, because you can't manual because there's only two wheels.
Yeah,
so you're technically manualing all the time.
Somehow you also have goofy stance, even though both of your feet are planted forward.
Well, no. So I stand backwards and put my arms behind my back and lean back, and that's me going forward. That's called goofy stance.
That's your goofy stance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a renowned segwayer. Anywho.
As the Kanines can tell, me and Bob are both very prolific skateboarders.
Yeah. We understand the nomenclature. We love the culture. We love them skateboards. We each own one, so...
We each own at least one skateboard. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'd like to own two by the end of 2021, but that's neither here nor there. Anywho, you know what? I will say both of these games could have used more skateboarding.
I agree.
Wouldn't it be cool if Joel taught Ellie how to ollie during their downtime?
Yeah.
Because if he was like, oh, I skateboarded when I was a young man, but now I'm old and I kind of look like Wolverine.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, cool skateboard. And they pull it off of like somebody's dead body or something. And then he's like, let me show you something, kiddo. And then she's like, I like you now. You're like my dad. And he's like, you're like my daughter. Huh? I should have written this game.
The end. Yeah,
the end. Instead of riding that horse everywhere, just skateboard everywhere. Am I right?
I know. The horse was definitely a surprise mechanic change, even though you're still moving forward, not really like getting a chance to explore too much. You were on a horse this time.
Yeah.
Let's get into some similarities between The Last of Us and Superman 64 on From Justin to Game. So, what do you got any good similarities, or I can start?
Well, I already started off with the fact that both were released on the back nine of their respective systems.
Right.
We're on the cusp of a new system, which makes you wonder, why didn't they just... I guess when the new system comes out, they kind of have to redesign the game.
Yeah. it's probably a lot of work to be like, oh, well, let's put it on this new system now.
Yeah. Anywho, what's your first comparison there, Mike?
I did. Although I did play it on PlayStation 4 on the remastered version, so they did eventually put it out. I don't know when, but it looked pretty good actually.
Mm-hmm.
Although you could also see that its age was showing because some of the character models looked pretty potatoey.
Oh yeah, was it the remaster? Did it feel like it was in 4K?
Yeah, I mean the graphics looked pretty sweet, but the character models were a bit.
How was the
outdated.
water rendering? There's like there's some moments where Joel is in water.
He is in water.
How did the water
a few times.
feel?
It felt great. Yeah. It was a good. Yeah, it looked really good too.
Sweet.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. I just love talking about water, and I love talking about skateboarding. Anywho,
both games feature a main character with like a superpower of some sort, or like some sort of abnormality that separates them from the rest of the people in the city.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Ellie is immune to the spores from the pandemic, and Superman, is from Krypton and he's got superpowers. He's Superman.
Nice.
Yeah, that is nice.
That's good. Okay, my second one, I guess, is both games feature airborne toxins. So it's supposed to. So supposedly in Superman 64, they could not render the city far enough. It was supposed to be 1 square mile of Metropolis, but they couldn't figure out how to render, even though games had come out that had achieved this on the N64. Yeah. Like Star Wars, the flying fighting one, which I've played, and it's not bad.
What, Rogue Squadron?
Yeah, that's the game. It's that like same system, and they just couldn't make it work. But so they couldn't render the city far enough in real time, so they used this thick fog, and they during development the excuse was that it's what's the kryptonite? That's what it's called. I was going to say the green shit. Kryptonite, like dust or haze. Yeah. That's that Lex Luthor has put in the air to weaken Superman. But really, it was just a cover-up because they couldn't figure out how to render the game properly. And in The Last of Us, the airborne spores are what caused the pandemic. And ultimately is the dramatic sort of motor to push the story forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. There's
great.
I sounded bored, but I wasn't. That's like a thing with the N64. With there's a lot of that draw distance fog.
Mm-hmm.
That was always a thing. So another similarity: both games feature characters walking around restrictive spaces that are supposed to be fictionalized versions of metropolises. Nice. Metropoli, good. And then, just kind of like punching people and stuff and throwing items that blow up.
Mm-hmm.
Because, obviously Superman 64. And then Last of Us, you just kind of walk around these very strict mazes, and there's not like a whole lot of interaction you can do with the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really open worldy in any way. It's like you're just following a path pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
So they're very similar in that way.
They are. Speaking of that, another similarity is that both feature male protagonists with toxic masculinity slash daddy issues. Ooh. So hear me out on this. So the toxic masculinity, they both use their fists, their aggression, their knees, their feet, even to the chagrin of Warner Brothers. Superman can blow up cars and punch those dudes who try to attack him who are in like all black. And in The Last of Us, Joel always has to fight these zombies and protect Ellie, and he's constantly in harrowing positions and just has to like beat the shit out of people. But also, they both have daddy issues, and here's why it's interesting.
Oh, okay.
So Superman has daddy issues with his dad back on like Krypton or whatever the fuck in their backstory.
Jor-El.
Yes, played by Marlon Brando in the first Superman. And Joel is the daddy issue. He's a daddy, but then he loses his daughter, and now he's just a sad daddy.
Yeah.
So they both have daddy issues, and they're both the lead of their game, and they have to just kick the shit out of things and people to get everything done and protect the people they love.
Yeah, and he loses his daughter, and so now this daddy has to hang out with some other daughter. And it's like, this ain't my daughter.
And become her daddy.
Yeah. It is definitely a great daddy transformation for sure.
Yeah, as far as daddy arcs go, pretty well done.
I'm going to build on what you just said.
Awesome.
Both feature a kind of boring-ish main character who doesn't share a lot of truth about his life. Like, that's the toxic masculinity thing. Because Ellie's always trying to find out from Joel, like, hey, yo, why are you sad? Or why are you, like, so closed off? Something bad happened? Where's your daughter at? And he's just like, nothing. I am no good to talk about this. And then he just doesn't really ever say anything or do anything for most of the game except for killing stuff.
Yeah.
Similarly, Superman is holding a secret.
And what secret is that?
That he is Superman.
Superman is Superman.
Well, it's not a secret that Superman is Superman, but it is a secret that Clark Kent is Superman.
Wait, who's Clark Kent?
Well, he's this guy who works at the newspaper who wears glasses.
Yeah, I know him. But what does that have to do with Superman?
He's Superman.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know?
You're telling me Clark Kent is Superman?
Yeah.
No.
They don't look similar in any way.
I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah.
No way.
Well, okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree about this fact. Question mark. Yeah. So that's that one.
Nice. Both feature unconventional means of transportation. So,
nice.
Superman can fly through golden rings and just fly in general, and like fly jankily. Like the mechanics are pretty rough. And in The Last of Us, Joel and Ellie get to ride a horse.
Wait, that's an unconventional mean of transportation?
In a game,
isn't it one of the OG
he's
ways of transportation?
No, it's unconventional because it's the future.
Go on.
So, like, the game takes place in, like, modern time when he has his daughter and she gets killed in the outbreak of the virus.
Yes.
And then decades later, we sort of start the story again with him. And they have cars still. They have modern technology. But amidst all that, he has to giddy up and ride a horse to get from place to place in certain parts of the game. So I just think it's unconventional because he's got 2 feet. They still have cars and they use cars. But then sometimes he's like, let's get on this horse instead of this car.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
it's true what they say. Cars are cars all over the world. But
but horses are horses.
But horses are horses, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I was surprised that they just all of a sudden throw a horse at you. You're like, you have to ride a horse now. It's like, what? I've literally been squatting, and swimming my way through the city of Austin, and now I have to ride a horse?
I know.
What are you trying to do, game?
I'd use the word unconventional, but whatever. to each their own.
Yeah, it is one of the few horse-based games.
Yeah.
They throw the horse at you in the back 9 of the game, too.
Interesting.
And I mean, I didn't finish Superman 64. One can assume that there's a horse at the end. That Superman rides a horse.
There's a fish he fights, so obviously there's a horse he has to fight, too.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah, it's like Legend of Zelda.
Or there's like a horse in a burning building, and it's got to get saved, and Superman goes in and saves the horse.
Save my horse.
And then the horse is like, how do I repay you? And he goes, I never look a gift horse in the mouth. And then the horse is like, that literally doesn't make sense.
Yeah, in this context.
Like, good thing I'm not a newspaper man, and I don't know how to read or write. I'm just a superhero. Winks at the horse, and the horse is like, what is that supposed to mean? And then he flies away. He's like, I got some gold rings to fly through, so shut up, horse. And then he flies away.
And the horse goes home and talks to the horse's wife and is like, I encountered Superman today, and he said something that I thought was rather odd.
And then the horse's wife is like, you mean something like this? And then the front page of the newspaper is Superman. And she's just stenciled in thick brim glasses over his face.
Yeah.
And she's like, look familiar. And he's like, the newspaper man? And
yeah,
then
and he drops his mug that he's holding in his his horseshoed hoof.
Yeah.
And it smashes on the ground.
His hot cup of joke. He's like, oh my God.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
Great riff.
That was good. That felt nice.
Felt nice.
Awesome. What's your next one there,
again.
my man?
It's good to riff again.
So feels good to riff.
Both games are post-apocalyptic in their own way. The Last of Us obviously takes place in a pandemic-based post-apocalypse. Very timely game to play right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Superman 64 doesn't seem post-apocalyptic on the surface, but the story of the game is not clear. But as I understand it, it is Lex Luthor traps Superman and a bunch of his friends in a virtual world. Because this was the justification they had for all of the weird gameplay mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Superman could only do a certain amount of things because of the creative notes and stuff that he got from Warner Brothers. So they were like, well, the only way that we can make all of this make sense is that Superman is trapped in a video game of sorts. So that's why he's doing all these weird things like flying through rings, because that's what Lex Luthor has him do in this weird virtual world that he's created. So it's post-apocalyptic in that could potentially happen to somebody in the future.
It's interesting that the Wachowskis just ripped off Superman 64 when they made The Matrix, and nobody ever put it together. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like, isn't that fascinating? I hate just like blatant ripoffs and nobody says anything.
Yeah. I mean, good for them for disguising it with like the little plug thing in the head instead of just a gigantic cartoony portal. But so, do you got any other ones?
I do. Both characters. This is more of a cosmetic comparison, but both characters have dark hair. Both lead characters have dark hair and like good hairlines.
Yeah, and chiseled jaws.
Yeah, chiseled jaws, and are like sort of your stereotypically handsome lead.
Yeah. They're both the kind of boring white male protagonist character.
Yeah.
Although Superman is just interesting because he is Superman, and he has those powers, and he has Clark Kent that he can be sometimes. Mm-hmm. So he's balancing a lot. Whereas Joel is just like, I'm just a grizzled guy who kills things.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's it. And I wonder what kind of conditioner they both use, given their circumstances. I guess we'll just leave that there, huh?
I was just trying to come up with something I couldn't. My brain was literally just like,
jeez.
Both have comic books related to them.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
The Last of Us has comic books, and believe it or not, so does Superman.
You mean companion literature?
Yeah. And believe it or not, Superman also has comic books.
That isn't correct, Mike. That's not true.
I know, yeah. And those comic books also provide more of the backstory and lore, more so than the game itself gives.
Yeah. I have a comparison. So in Superman 64, you have this lead male character in all blue who can go really, really fast and fly through golden rings. And in The Last of Us, you have a short blue male hedgehog with running shoes on and white gloves. And he's just trying to run through these golden rings and try to beat bad guys who are not superhumanoid. There's just a lot of similarities between these two games.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
Both games had entries in their franchises that made nerds really, really angry.
What pissed off nerds with The Last of Us?
So The Last of Us Part 1 is heralded as like a masterpiece of game design, I guess, of storytelling, I think, more so than game design.
Right.
And it is just really seen as this brilliant, brilliant Citizen Kane of video games.
Okay.
The Last of Us Part 2, on the other hand, has just caused a huge, huge uproar on the internet.
Why?
People were review bombing it. People were being misogynistic and angry at the actors. They were like sending death threats to the developers.
Wow.
If you haven't played The Last of Us Part 2, we're going to do some spoilers. I haven't played it, but I am aware of the spoilers. So,
right.
So stop listening or skip ahead maybe 2 minutes if you want to skip this part.
Or just go fa la 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 really loudly and see if that works.
Put your fingers over the earbuds in your ears and try and plug your ears that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so supposedly Joel dies early in the game, and that made a lot of gamers mad. But then also, a bunch of people were mad because there's LGBTQ content in it. And
that pissed off
that
the
pissed
nerds.
off a lot of the nerd gamers, yeah.
Wow,
it's like
that sucks.
it's very similar to like the Ghostbusters 2016 controversy. A bunch of guys who are nerds are mad that the property that they like is mishandled, manhandled, as it were.
I was going to say, it sounds like they were woman-handled, and that was what was so upsetting. A woman handled these things.
Yeah, so I think that's the crux of it, is that like there's the misogyny, because in Last of Us Part 2 you play as two different characters, and they're both women,
right?
As I understand it, and then Joel isn't there, so the kind of like bland white male protagonist is dead, and you have to play as like these gay women.
Well, do you play
in
as
this
Ellie?
action franchise? Yeah, you play as Ellie.
Yeah, but
like
it's
an
like
adult.
in the DLC of the first game, it's shown that like she kisses a girl and then immediately gets attacked by one of the zombies. Like that is supported in the first game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of surprising to me that all the incels out there would be so pissed.
I know. I think it has more to do with
killing Joel,
with the fact that Joel is dead,
right?
And that you can't play as the boy. You have to play as the girl.
But you just played as the boy for like fucking 40 hours.
I know.
Change it up.
In the first game, you play as Ellie for like a section of the game, and that's the best part of the game.
Yeah, and the DLC you play as her.
Yeah. So it's like, what were you expecting, people? Like, some people were also mad because they thought that the game had kind of like a dissonance to it, where the game is making you think as a gamer about the choices you're making, but the game also doesn't let you make choices in the game.
Right.
If that makes sense. So,
yeah.
But I think that's like a particularly thoughtful version of the angry gamer crowd, which I don't think is huge. So,
yeah, they're definitely the minority amongst the people pissed.
Exactly. But Superman 64 makes a lot of game nerds angry, to the point that there is literally a person named the Angry Game Nerd. This was an interesting episode to do because I'm aware of, gaming YouTubers, but this really opened my eyes to just how many people kind of have their vibe is, I'm a guy who plays video games and I am angry at these games. And their video is mostly just them going, what is this? Or why did they do it like this? This sucks. For 45 minutes. And people think it's funny.
It's such a cheap medium, just like complain entertainment,
Yeah.
Just complaining about things.
Yeah, that's why we are great.
Well, yeah, Mike, that's what I was alluding to. I think we really cut through the BS. We give things the benefit of the doubt, and we're better than the rest of those people.
We are. We have our cake and we eat it too. We say things are bad, but we also say things are good.
Yes, exactly.
We get to talk about things that are bad, also that things are good. So we're smart.
We're smart. Sometimes we look a gift horse in the mouth, and sometimes we don't. You know what I mean? We walk the line, people. So I have one more, but this one is like partially like hypothetical, depending on what the future holds for HBO. But So both video games have a relationship to like companion film adaptations. So Superman several Superman films, obviously. Many iterations, many generations, many different people playing Superman. And The Last of Us, supposedly there's going to be a deal with HBO to make a mini series of The Last of Us following this 2020 game. Whether or not that actually happens, who knows? But all I know is HBO's got that money and they like making cool shows. So
I'll build on that actually.
Oh my God! You
Superman,
son of a gun! You would, you would. You're crazy.
Superman has a relationship with HBO also because
get out of here.
HBO Max is going to be putting out the Snyder Cut, the famed Snyder Cut. Speaking of angry nerds, the Snyder Cut will be actually released on HBO of Justice League.
I also heard that HBO is going to make a hyper-realistic, hyper-dramatic mini-series of Sonic the Hedgehog as a companion piece to the Snyder Cut of Justice League.
Did you see this Sonic the Hedgehog movie?
Oh, boy, did I ever. Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah. Oh. It was a real turd, real bad movie.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say it wasn't
easy.
Bad. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It wasn't good, but
it was easy watching. You know,
it was easy watching. That was what was good about it.
Yeah.
When I got to ask you this though, when will they make a movie featuring a CG character that just happens to end up in the real world?
Who knows? I'm still waiting.
I'm starting to feel like I'm one of those YouTubers now, who's just a little too snarky about something so
stupid,
meaningless, and stupid. Yeah.
Trivial. When you dedicate your life to trivial things, it really makes you wonder what the point is of all of this.
Yeah, that is a true Trivial Pursuit.
Wow. Well said. Holy shit. That takes the cake tonight, I think, for bits.
So you don't have any more comparisons?
Well, they both made lots of money, and both feature male characters who get sopping wet. So,
what a combination! I did not expect the back nine of that sentence to end that way.
Anywho, those are my last two. Yeah.
The Superman 64 was a surprise hit.
Mm-hmm.
It was sold almost 1 million copies, probably by the end of its lifespan, which I guess was a lot back in the N64 days.
Well, 500,000 was a lot. And to me, I'm like, is that a lot? But like in its initial release, it was 500,000 copies.
Well,
but that is a lot, 500,000.
Well, games back then were also like way cheaper to make.
Yes.
So if you sold 500,000 copies of a game like Superman 64, where you have like 11 people on your team, and it's only in development for 2 years, and I guess the license for the game is expensive, maybe, but 500,000 copies, you could definitely make your money back theoretically, especially if you're paying 1990s $80 for the game.
Mm-hmm. Which would be like $2-3, with inflation.
Yes.
Do you have any more there, Mike?
I do.
Of course you do.
I'm going to do a little speed round.
Nice.
Both games feature conveying information through reading. So in The Last of Us, you find notes everywhere, sometimes like papers or newspapers.
Right, that's right.
In Superman 64, there's a lot of like story, in quotes here, conveyed through newspaper clippings or that like take up the whole screen.
Right.
Or just information is given to you through these like newspaper things. Number 2, both games are bat adjacent. So in The Last of Us, there's clickers. They use echolocation kind of thing to find the people that they want to eat or bite or whatever. And Superman is friends with Batman.
Well, are they friends though?
They're in the Justice League.
Well, they're friends sometimes and they're enemies sometimes.
Yeah, they're colleagues.
Real love-hate, real toxic relationship.
But they're colleagues then. Superman and Batman are colleagues. They're like work friends.
You know who they should let into the Justice League, Mike? Sonic the Hedgehog.
Jesus Christ.
That guy would crush.
Anyway, moving on. Both games involve trying to kill something and then not at the last minute.
Yes, that's right.
So at the end of The Last of Us, spoiler alert, Joel breaks into a hospital to get Ellie, who's on a hospital bed. They're going to kill her so that they can make a vaccine from her.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joel bursts into the room and saves her life. So basically dooming humanity, theoretically, just so he can have a daughter again. So he can have another daddy-daughter day.
Yeah.
And then Superman 64, Warner Brothers basically was trying to kill the game as they were making it. And then it was released at the last minute. And my final comparison is at the beginning of Superman 64, Lex Luthor says, "Complete my maze if you want to see your friends." And that is pretty much describes the plot
game of...
or the game of Last of Us, where you just kind of have to go through this very linear maze if you want to see your friends.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's a great one,
Same
Mike.
game. They're both virtually the same game.
The Last of Us would have been a stronger game.
Yes.
Okay. If the protagonist wasn't Joel, but instead was Sonic the Hedgehog. Imagine
you bastard.
Sonic loses his daughter. Decades later, we follow Sonic. He's haggard. He's graying. He has a beard. He's still fast. And now he has to take Ellie to the Firefly militia to try to find a cure for this disease.
Yes.
But the whole time he's chasing his own fatherhood, but he's so fast, but he can't catch the one thing he wants, which is to have a family again. There'd be something really beautiful and poetic about that I think the game just missed.
Did you ever play Sonic 06?
On the GameCube.
You did?
Yeah, I owned it, yeah.
Wait.
It glitched out, though.
It's the one where where Sonic the Hedgehog kisses a human woman.
You know what? I'd have to see the trailer because I had a Sonic game on the GameCube, and
it may have just been Sonic Adventure, which was actually a good game.
Oh, maybe that's what I had.
Or Sonic Adventure 2 was okay.
Right. Anyways,
no, Sonic 06 is famously bad
because he kisses a human, or what?
No, it's supposedly just a terrible game to play. Also, it's like really poorly put together. There's also this weird storyline that's like super complicated, kind of impenetrable, doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Whereas Sonic is interacting with humans and he like kisses a woman at some point. But he looks like Sonic and the humans are like photorealistically kind of like, they kind of look like normal humans. They're not cartoon humans.
Right.
So anyway, I was going to say the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is kind of like an adaptation of Sonic 06.
Right. Yeah.
Because like Sonic is in a human world with all of these other humans.
Yeah.
And he's the only hedgehog from outer space, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, we were talking about like The Last of Us is a good game.
Yes.
A lot of people say that the story is amazing. It's like the best told stories in a video game. And they're not wrong in a way. Like it does tell the story that it tells effectively.
And in 2013, maybe it was taking the cake for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's not anymore.
No. As someone who played it recently, it kind of was like, this is not as good as, like, there was so much hype for it that it was ultimately kind of a disappointing experience.
Yeah.
But it made me also think that standards for video games are much lower when it comes to like storytelling, character, literally all of the things that make movies good.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's
or they
changing
make movies
now,
work.
though.
Yeah, it is changing now, but I do find it interesting because people say that this is the Citizen Kane of video games. But if we tried to find an equivalent for this in movies, it would basically be appropriately enough, I guess, the Zack Snyder, Dawn of the Dead remake. Like The Last of Us is about as good as that as far as movies go.
No,
maybe 28 Days Later, maybe.
It comes down to just the expectations are different depending on the medium,
Yeah.
But I do think it's changing. Like even in the articles I read about The Last of Us, like the behind the scenes aspect of it, the very much the mission was from the creative director and the actors and the other director was like, the video game landscape is changing and narrative is now important,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's becoming more and more true as games are coming out and we see them coming out.
But I agree in theory, but I also think that it's not important at all.
For a video game? Well, no, I think it depends on the game.
I guess so, but I find that The Last of Us makes you watch a bunch of movie and then you have to kill a bunch of zombies, but every time that there's like an important emotional beat, they're like, "Oh no, zombies are here." And then you don't get to really like experience that emotional beat. And I know that it's just kind of a cliffhangy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I feel like the game gets in the way of the narrative. It feels like it's a movie that just happens to have game segments in it.
Well, nobody playing a video game wants just cutscenes, right? No. And I think there is an inherent flaw in video games as a medium if you are considering yourself a storyteller. Because you also don't want to just have characters and you just tell them, like you tell the player what buttons to push at what time. And you're just like solving puzzles, but also giving them like exposition at the same time. You want them, like if a game is to be super playable, you do have to sacrifice story. And like you said, yeah, with The Last of Us, like there were like the equivalency of like basically a bunch of commercial breaks.
Yeah.
But the commercial break is you getting really stressed out as you try to have to kill a bunch of people or things and save somebody's life, save Ellie's life.
I constantly was just dying so many times. Like, it's really
a hard
hard
game.
Yeah, it is. It's strange. I think the flaw of the game, though, is like the
not enough hedgehogs.
Not enough hedgehogs. Yeah. No, the flaw of the game is like you are playing the game, and you, as a player, have agency theoretically to make choices in the game.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the game kind of prevents you from doing that because you can't really interact with the world around you. You kind of just have to keep going forward. And then when there's a potential story choice, you can't make it,
Yeah.
I think that's what the problem with the second one was that it was kind of like this critique on violence in video games, but yet you couldn't not kill people. So, and you couldn't not save Ellie at the end of this game. You had to save her, which is like, well, you could have not saved her. There might have been a different ending. It's like, why didn't they do that?
Well, it's interesting. I actually read that a lot of the complaints initially, before the game was released, they were doing tests with audiences, basically, of like test gamers. And they were like, we want two options at the end. To either leave her or get her. But then of that, everyone who said they wanted the option, something like 90% said, well, we would have just picked the way it went anyways. Because that's the more poetic, beautiful way to end the game. But the option, I can see why they didn't do it at the time, but maybe over the years since then, it would have held up better if there had been options.
Well, but the second one, which just came out, apparently has the same issue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was a complaint. Some people
there's just a couple of dum-dums making these games.
Well,
I don't know.
But then also the game never at any point says you have a choice to do anything. So it's not like they make a promise and then don't deliver on it.
That's true. Yeah.
The game literally is like you're just on a theme park ride for the most part. And that's what's good about it. That's why that's the strong part of the game is the production value, the way that they like hold the player's hand to tell the story. But yeah, I guess that's a critique that for a promise the game never makes.
Yeah.
But it's still like kind of a weird, interesting part about it because does at sometimes feel like you are again just watching a movie that you sometimes get to play.
Yeah.
And I think from what I understand, PlayStation is like really moving towards that as the like that's the way that PlayStation games are going to be.
Right.
Because it's like a cinematic, high production value experience that I think a lot of people like. Yeah. Whereas some games like a really good game, Breath of the Wild, the Zelda game, the way that the story is told in that game is, I think, cool because they don't tell you anything about your character, really. You get random little cutscenes, but for the most part, you just kind of figure out what your story is as you play the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I always thought that was so silly in a lot of video games like Grand Theft Auto, where it's like they really set up who your character is. You're like, you're this grizzled kind of badass or whatever. Or something. Maybe that's not a good example. But in games where they set you up as some sort of grizzled badass, but then as soon as the player gets control, then you can jump around and you're really incompetent. You can die constantly.
You're just teabagging things.
Yeah, and so it's like, But everything that happens technically is part of the story.
Right.
Even if that's not what the developers intended, just because they hand it over to the player at some point, then it's like, I'm affecting the story by having my character teabag people.
It's really a test of the fallibility and the cruelty of humanity, you know? It's like, we made this beautiful thing, and the real test is, are you going to fuck it up? And a bunch of times people are just like, yeah, I'm going to fuck it up. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know? What does that say about people? More so than the game. It's like a mirror on society, you know? We're all just having avatars, teabagging each other. Like, get out of here. Like, nobody ever wanted that, but here we are.
Are any of the games that you're playing these days, any examples of things where, like, the story that the game developer is creating is kind of broken by your own actions in the game?
I would say Halo. You can't play the online aspects of it anymore on the Xbox 360. But a friend showed me a video of Halo Reach, and like Halo Reach was the last game made by Bungie before they sold the franchise to whatever the subsequent company was that made Halo 4.
Yeah.
And like in the plot, I mean, you can just like fuck shit up in the campaign, but when you watch videos of the online, like the music is very like operatic, intense. The scale, everything's on a global scale. Like, it's very dramatic and intense. And the story is supposed to be quite emotional. And that's what they're trying to get you to do. But you can just like get in a warthog and like crash and do donuts and flip around. And then if you play online, you can just like wreak havoc with people. From what I've gathered, I've never done it. But
does the story mode, do they tell you you're a supreme badass? Space Marine.
Basically, yeah. So in Reach, you start out in this platoon, and you're a character. You're replacing a guy who's just died, and everyone's resenting you. And then the commander's like, "Hey, I heard about your record. I'm glad to have you on the team."
Oh goodness!
And then the guy's like, "It's no biggie," you know. Like, and they all have gruff voices.
Oh,
and
does
like,
Master Chief speak?
No, you don't play as Master Chief. I don't believe.
Oh, okay.
In Reach, but yeah, everyone's talking in Reach, and everyone's like tough. But then you can be a total dumbass in the vehicles, you know? Or you can just be like punching the aliens without killing them.
Yeah.
You know, and doing stupid shit like that. You know, it's a bit ridiculous, I think, with Halo specifically.
Yeah. But also, I mean, that kind of goes back to the first thing we were talking about how we kind of have different standards for video games.
Yeah.
You know, like we have... if that happened in a movie, we'd be like, that was the worst movie I ever saw. But because like the world of a video game is different, or the feeling we get from playing it because it's interactive.
Yeah.
Like the effect that we have on it, we forgive that for some reason. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we can be like, they're like, you're the best Marine I've ever seen. And then you just get in your warthog and just crash it into Blood Gulch and kill yourself, you know?
Yeah. Which I've done.
Yeah.
You know, I've done that multiple times. They're very hard to drive.
Yeah. In your brain, you're not like, oh, this story seems confusing. It's just like, no, this is what I'm bringing to it.
Yeah.
One thing that I found interesting when I was doing research on Superman 64 was that the company Titus also made a RoboCop game.
That was their last game, right?
It was for the original Xbox, and it came out in 2003, long after RoboCop was relevant.
Well, yeah, like over 10 years.
Yeah, that to me was wild. It seems like, well, they're never going to succeed if they keep making like intellectual property choices like this.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they're just trying to get the cheapest option. You know what I mean?
Well, I know exactly.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, but my question is, any movies that you think should get a video game treatment that hasn't had it yet?
I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Jesus Christ. You know the rule of 3. You have like the rule of 70.
Yeah, but the rule of 3 only works if it's funny originally, but you have to do the rule of 70 if you have to beat something to death to the point in which the absurdity reaches that threshold where it becomes funny. Either for the first time or the second time.
That is a brilliant assessment of like comedy theory right there.
Yeah, and I can be a funny guy, and like that is one strategy I enlist often.
Yeah,
I
okay.
did it earlier
Okay.
today with a couple folks, and it wasn't funny, and then it got really funny.
You're right, actually, because the first Sonic the Hedgehog joke you made, I'll
Was weak.
admit,
Was
wasn't
weak.
very funny. I didn't think it was funny. I was like,
Exactly.
oh, okay,
Exactly.
okay. And then now I can't wait for you to make another one.
It's a war of attrition. You need to teach the people what they want. You have to break them down.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
they didn't know they wanted Sonic the Hedgehog jokes thrown into this conversation that has nothing to do with Sonic the Hedgehog. You have
That's
to
true.
teach them that.
That is true.
I had to teach you, Mike, and you have been taught how to run fast, very, very fast, like Sonic the Hedgehog.
You got to go fast.
That's what they say.
So what was the movie again?
Oh, so I'd love to see Halo turn into like a proper film.
Right.
And then for films turn into video games. That's a harder one to like. That's what you asked, right? Like movies that should be turned to video games.
I meant to ask which game would you like to see a movie made out of, but it can go both ways.
No, I like Halo hands down, and then probably Shrek 2.
Shrek 2 made into a video game?
No, Shrek 2, the video game made into a movie. I'd love to see. So here's my vision. You know how when you use Google Translate and you keep translating in Google Translate, it'll like devolve the original phrase into nonsense.
Yeah.
I would love to see the degeneration of Shrek 2, the film comes out. The video game comes out. It's pretty close, but not exactly like the movie in terms of plot and character. And then somebody who doesn't know the film exists makes a film purely based off of that video game.
Yeah.
And to see what that looks like. I would love to see that, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. Something that's making me think about is how like movies are timeless in a way. Like a movie that comes out in the 70s is timeless if it's good. Whereas a video game can sometimes be like it can age in a way that movies don't, just due to console generations and how like mechanics evolve and how graphics evolve and all that stuff.
And the other thing is like the technical inadequacies of old films still work, but technical inadequacies, like I love Mario 64, but there are many parts of it that just suck as a player.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The mechanics get all fucked up. The map is confusing.
The camera
drives you nuts.
Yeah.
And yet it is a good game. Like objectively, there's enough about it that is good that you enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
Like with like excluding nostalgia. Like it's just a fun game. But there are major issues. Whereas you see an old film and the audio's in mono and it's black and white and scratchy.
You're describing Mank.
Exactly. Maybe Mank would be cool as a video game. And you just like you're Herman Mankiewicz and you're writing a screenplay, but you have to like sneak and get bottles of booze while the nurse is trying to like
that's good.
Find you like the game where you're a goose and you have to hide from people and fuck shit up. But you're just Mank and you're always squatting trying to get alcohol in the workplace. Might be kind of fun.
And then there's side levels where you have to just sit there and write Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
But it's like it's basically a typing simulator.
Yeah, exactly. It's a typing simulator.
Or it's like one of those teach typing games. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's like I don't know how you could do this actually, but like it's a typewriter and then the letters, the keys of the letters light up and you have to try to hit it like in Rock Band before it goes away. And then you get a score at the end. But then you look and you're like, oh, that was a scene from Citizen Kane.
Yeah. And the music that you're basically playing it like Rock Band. But the music that you're playing is like foxtrot music, like
exactly. And then Orson Welles is the boss. Both literally and in terms of mechanics of video games, he's the boss.
Yeah.
And you have to beat him by winning an Oscar instead of him.
Wait, didn't he also win the Oscar?
Yeah, they like co-won.
Yeah.
The Oscar.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But you know, like you gotta beat him at something.
And there's also like a weird subplot in the game, or like a side quest, I guess, where you have to go to a party and convince people that Hitler is actually not good.
Yes. Yeah.
Or that he's a threat, I guess, more so.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go to a party, and it's just
that's a DLC. You have to download that, and then it's just like interweaving conversations about the rise of Nazism and fascism in Germany and how it's a problem.
It's like, I'm not buying any games this week. I'm saving money so I can buy the new Mank DLC.
Yeah.
What a phrase.
Yeah, no kidding. Holy shit. But I don't know. Like, it's a lot easier to take like a spectacle driven thing and turn that into a movie than turn a movie into a game or a ride. You know what I mean?
Like, interesting.
It makes sense that Pirates of the Caribbean was based off of a ride.
Right.
Because it gave you very little. It just kind of gave you like an era and an aesthetic. And you're like, okay, we'll just fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
But films have so much detail. You kind of have to start removing those things and distill it into something simpler in order to translate it to a video game or an amusement ride.
Right.
Or, I don't know, whatever,
Well, they are two different mediums. And it is interesting that they're kind of converging more than ever nowadays in terms of like video games being like, I'm basically just showing you a movie in the middle of this game or throughout this game. But yeah, it is like when you're adapting something, you kind of have to take the essence of the movie and make a video game of it instead of being way too faithful. But then also, I guess they get that wrong a lot of the times because they just kind of take a property and then plug it onto another kind of gameplay mechanic that's already popular.
It's usually pretty lazy when they do that.
Yeah, like the Home Improvement Super Nintendo game, you're basically Tim the Two-Man Tailor and you're like platforming and you're throwing wrenches at dinosaurs and other things.
Yeah, like that's stupid. But
if they made a game of Home Improvement as it is as a show, it may have been better. I don't know. You just have to you're in a sitcom.
Yeah.
So you have to just raise your family and you have to go to work and embarrass Al Borland,
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, but for some reason they chose to do it the way that they did it.
Is there anything you'd want to see, like vice versa, games to movies or movies to games? As we wrap this up, anything you're feeling that you'd like to see?
I mean, I think that the Come and See would be a pretty interesting video game.
Holy shit. That's a wild choice.
Just because it's like, yeah, you can do a lot with the game experience, I think.
Right.
The movie kind of shows a kid whose innocence slowly kind of gets deteriorated as he becomes exposed to the horrors of war. I think you can kind of portray that in video games in an interesting way, I think.
Like
just like an insanity meter or something like that, where he's like,
or his hair gets whiter.
His hair gets whiter. You have to do like a mission and kill things, and then you just, I don't know, trauma points, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's like a little mini game where you have to do a dance with this girl you meet. But anyway, that's like, I think that'd be an interesting video game. Because video games usually glorify war. It'd be interesting to see a game that really, really does not.
Yeah.
As for games being made into a movie, I'm surprised they don't have a Legend of Zelda movie.
I am too, actually. That's a really good one, Mike.
Yeah, like Super Mario obviously was such a disaster.
Yeah.
That they were just like, we're not making any game movies anymore.
But like Mario is not enough to make a movie. Like there's no way you could have made that a good thing. Like, Mario's so fucking stupid as a concept. You know what I mean?
They are making a CG movie, though, of Mario soon.
Why?
Because I think they realized, we should make it like this instead of like Cyberpunk.
Right.
Yeah, because it was more like Blade Runner when the movie came out.
Yeah.
But that was just kind of like, it came out at the tail end of the 80s.
Blade Runner might be a cool video game.
It would be a cool video game. I think it might even be a video game.
Oh, really? Oh, it was probably done poorly, though. But like a first-person shooter, like detective game would be like really cool.
There's a game like that I played a lot as a kid called Under a Killing Moon. And you're basically like a PI in like a weird post-apocalyptic future. It's not cyberpunky, but there's a lot of full motion video, which was like a big thing at the time because it was on CD-ROM.
Right.
A new format. So
back when CD-ROM came out, yeah.
And appropriately enough, It has some big name actors in it. One of them is Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane.
Wow.
So there you go.
There you go. It comes full circle, doesn't it?
Comes full circle, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, anyway, that was a pretty fun diversion, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was great. It's cool to talk about not movies.
Yeah, it is cool to talk about not movies.
And it's cool that we got to play two really, fascinating different video games.
Yeah, maybe next time we do an episode of From Justin to Game, we can do a Halo entry.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, maybe, we'll do other games or who knows.
Maybe we can tackle other mediums too.
Maybe a book. Like, it might be fun to get into books. Like if we did like a short form, like Hemingway's done some shorter stories.
Yeah.
Who knows? We could read a receipt.
I guess, yeah, you could, yeah. Like, The Sun Also Rises is the same as this receipt.
Yeah. That I have from Walmart. Let's read about it.
Let's do that. Let's do an epi like that.
Yeah. Will this show devolve into absurdity at some point? And we're just like, we're comparing and contrasting this wicker basket with 2 blankets in it and this this like coding used for this website and the structure of it. Who knows? Maybe it'll just devolve into nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dream.
That's the hope. Yeah. And then one day everyone will be like, do you remember before the time that Mike and Bob went insane? They just melted. They spoke so meta that they stopped existing. They broke their own fabric of existence.
But in the before times, before the Wicker Basket episode?
Yeah, the fateful Wicker Basket episode, which they still managed to release. But only on cassette.
We truly jumped the shark, this future iteration of ourselves.
Yeah.
What a bunch of clowns these guys sound like they are going to be.
Yeah. Well, that was the episode, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Yeah, hopefully. I had fun.
And, keep on gaming. And if you're like a hardcore misogynist, just don't be, Yeah,
Fuck. Don't be.
I'm looking forward to playing The Last of Us Part 2. Is that what it's called, or just 2?
It's Part 2.
Part 2. Yeah, like heck, Jesus Christ. Anyways, it looks good. I watched the trailer and I was like, that looks like a great fucking game.
Yeah, I think there's like 15 to 20 hours of cutscenes in it. It's like 3 or 4 times longer than the original one.
Sweet. I watch enough, I watched Cheers in 2 months, so 40 hours of cutscenes does not intimidate me at all.
Okay, well then there you go.
Yeah.
You're in luck because they're coming out with Cheers, the video game, soon.
Oh, you know what? That's what I would like to see is Cheers, the video game. But like on an online, like JavaScript, like super beta game, back when that was a thing.
Just like a Cheers MMO where you're all in the same bar.
Yeah.
And you all play a different character. So you play Frasier, I play Sam. Mm-hmm. You all just kind of have to interact.
You would pick Sam, wouldn't you?
Why?
You just want to be the cool one.
Well, you would be Frasier.
Why?
I don't know.
Because I'm watching Frasier.
As I told you who you were. Oh, yeah, I guess because you're watching Frasier. You would pick Frasier then.
No, I'd pick Norm or Cliff.
Yeah, you would.
Cliff Clavin. I love Cliff Clavin.
Cliff Clavin's funny, yeah. He's good.
Thanks, everyone. We definitely appreciate it. We wanted to spice it up for the new year. Also, Happy New Year, everyone.
Oh, yeah, Happy New Year, yeah. Happy 2021. Goodbye, Donald Trump.
Hopefully.
Hello, vaccines.
Yes, again, hopefully. And this will be good.
It's going to be a good year. I think things are really going to be back to normal very soon, I say.
And then he disappeared. We never heard from him again. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side, Kanines.
Bye.
Roof.